friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. It is Thursday, May 5th, I believe, and we're in the middle of yet another rainstorm. It's been kind of crazy here, and the temperatures are still cold. As you notice, I'm wearing the flannel. It gets down in the 40s every night pretty much. Occasionally drops into the 30s. So it's kind of crazy. And then yet next week, according to the weathermen, I use that term very lightly. The term should probably be more like approximate guesstimator people. They say it's going to be over 80 every single day next week. It's going to be in the upper 80s, bumping 90s. Just crazy weather. The other thing I want to mention before we get deep into this video is, again, Friday, tomorrow morning, I will not be doing a Shop Talk Live. And the reason is I'll be playing a show at the Rolla Middle School for the elementary kids. However, if I can pull it off, I may do a live Shop Talk Friday afternoon, say 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, somewhere in that time frame. So kind of look out for that and join me then if you can. I'm going to make every effort to make that happen. On the other home front, you know, the doctor's visit on Tuesday, he told me after he gave me the magic pill, he said, you better stay close to a bathroom. He says, you better not make any plans for any trips or any... I told him, I said, Doc, I've been through this before. I said, trust me, it ain't going to happen like that with me. And he's going, oh, yeah, with this you will. He says, you better stay close to a bathroom. And I go, okay, fine. Well, there's been, you know, kind of like one small to medium movement since Tuesday. That's it. Yeah, it's not like that with me. My constitution, I'm telling you, I don't know why, you know, God chose to change my whole constitution, but from day one when I was born and only eat the, you know, bland foods to now, it's a totally different world. My wife, I am not exaggerating, she could like see prune juice on the shelf and have to go to the bathroom. You know, I mean, seriously. I could drink 3 bottles of it and go, you know, book a flight to London, and it wouldn't even faze me. And I know you think that I'm just saying that. You really, truly don't know me if you think I'm just saying that. I don't exaggerate about stuff like that. I'm just telling you, it ain't the same. My constitution is totally different than just about anybody you've ever run across. I don't know why. Have no clue why. Just is. And I appreciate, though, all the support you guys are giving me and the suggestions, but trust me, with a constitution like mine, you probably can't make a suggestion that I haven't already tried. Yeah, and many times over. My friends, I know we've had the humidity discussion many times. What prompted this was I saw a YouTube video where they started talking about humidity and how important it is to humidify your instruments. And as you probably know already where I'm headed with this, I'm totally opposed to humidifying instruments for the most part. I mean, there's always a rare exception, you know, so I'm not like black and white 100% never ever, but I'm like 80-20 for sure. 80%, you know, it's not a good idea. And here's why I tell you that. First of all, stop and think about it. Which instruments sound better, the old instruments or the new instruments? Well, you know, the old instruments sound better. A lot of that has to do with their finish more than anything else. People think it's because the wood's old and all this stuff, and I'll tell you what, a lot of it's got to do with the finish. And the finish gets harder and harder and more dry and more brittle over time. That's just a fact. It's a physics thing. You know, over time, the finishes kind of like crystallize and they become almost like glass. If you don't believe that, take something, scratch a finish, and how many times have I done that in my life? 1,000,000, and it will start to shatter just like little shards of glass. That's a good finish. That's why typically the old instruments sound better, because those finishes have gotten very hard, they vibrate very well. Where the softer finishes, they don't vibrate as well. It's more like putting a blanket over your instrument. What's that got to do with humidity? Well, I'm headed there. The wood itself on that old instrument, if you check it, it's not going to be much drier or different than it was, when it was relatively new. It'll be a little different one way or the other. One thing that will happen on that old instrument over time is that the pores will vibrate the resins out, and you'll smell that same smell in those old instruments. They all smell about the same because those resins come out of the wood and they're inside the instrument, and you can kind of smell them, a lot of times, especially on instruments that have been played a lot. All that to say is that the wood itself, the day it comes out of the kiln, is dried down to around 6%. You can set it on your shelf in your house and leave it there for the rest of your life, 50 years, 100 years, whatever, and I guarantee you when you check the percentage of moisture in that wood, it's going to be higher than 6%. Guarantee you. And even if you live in a pretty darn dry place, I'm just pretty much guaranteeing you that's going to be the case. And the only exception would be if you put it in a hot attic or something like that, or you left it in the direct sunlight or something like that, or if you lived in Arizona and especially left it in the sunlight, it's going to dry out. There's no question. But my point is that the wood itself can't shrink much more. Not only because it's down to the 6%, but just the physics of it. How much more could it possibly shrink? It just can't. I mean, that's the truth of it. You can believe whatever you want, but the bottom line fact, and it's a black and white physics fact, it just can't shrink much more unless you extremely heated it. Yes, it could then. But I'm just talking about under normal circumstances, and normal circumstances would be a normal house. How could it shrink much more? It just can't. You can believe whatever you want to believe. The point of it is, it can expand a lot more. It can expand almost exponentially. It can really expand a lot, but it can't get much smaller. It just can't. Unless you're talking extreme conditions. And nobody has extreme conditions in their house, especially if it's a modern house that's normally humidified, whatever. Will you see fluctuations? Of course you will. From summer to winter, you will see fluctuations. But in the driest part of the winter, the instrument's not going to be any smaller than it was day one when you got it, pretty much. I mean, it's going to be maybe a hair smaller if you bought it when it was super humid, but it's not going to be much smaller. Could it be much bigger? Absolutely. Put a lot of humidity into it and see how much bigger it gets. It's going to get bigger. My point about the finish is that your finish, once it gets hard and dried out, it doesn't expand and contract. It just can't. Physically, again, the physics of it won't let that happen. And when the wood expands, because you've humidified it, that finish is going to crack. Where do you think the term finish cracks comes from? It's because the wood has expanded and caused the finish to crack. Many people think it's because it dried out. It is not because it dried out. Guarantee you it's not because it dried out. The physics of that and the common sense of that will tell you that. I'm just trying to explain it to you so you don't make the mistakes of overdoing the humidity in your instruments. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about after seeing it from the other side. All of the stores of the world, all of the professional musicians of the world have had it indoctrinated into their brain that they are supposed to humidify their instruments. Because back around the 60s when they thought this up, they, had something else they could sell in their stores, and they all pushed it because it was a revenue generator for them. And it's just hung on. And I'm seriously telling you, it's wrong. It's just wrong. It doesn't hurt to humidify your instrument a little bit once in a while. I'm at least in that camp. I personally never humidify an instrument ever, and I've never had a problem. Based on that, is that all that you need to know? Well, probably not. But the point is that wood can expand easily. It cannot contract easily. It's already pretty much contracted as much as it's going to contract. So there's that. And it's just common sense. And it's just black and white physics. So think about that before you go into a huge regimen of humidifying your instruments. And if you've got a lot of finish cracks in your instruments, you'll know why. especially if they're older instruments and you're humidifying them, because they're going to expand and pop that glass-like finish. It's going to break. Now, let me tell you this. If you don't agree with anything else I've said, and that's okay if you don't, I can lead a horse to water, but I cannot make them swim on their back. So, with that being said, if you don't agree with what I've said up to this point, and if you don't like what I've said up to this point, at least hear this one thing, and you better take this to the bank. That is, if you're going to humidify them, do not, and I mean in capital letters, do not use those dang gel packs to do it. If you've got those in your instrument now and your instrument is in storage, I recommend highly that you go get them out of storage, get those gel packs out, throw those away, and put some other form of humidification in there. Do not use the gel packs, period. Why do I say that? Because I have seen the insides of guitars just decimated from those things. They burst and they just flow everywhere. If you've had that happen, put it in the comments so people can understand that what I'm telling you is the truth. There is no reason to use those dang gel packs. There's many other ways to humidify your instrument if you're still in that camp that you have to humidify it. At least hear that part. Don't use the gel packs. Why am I holding this guitar, you might ask? Well, this is the last Hurrah guitar, and it came back. And guess what? After telling you all that, it's dried out a little bit. And you're thinking, huh? He just said they don't dry and shrink. Well, this one did a little bit. Or it expanded. I'm not really sure. Actually, it almost looks like it expanded, is what it really looks like, to be honest with you. It looks like it expanded more than it contracted. But anyway, I don't know what caused it to be truthful. But it did develop a few cracks in the wood. And they're not finished cracks. They're actually in the wood. Now, why did that happen? Well, if you recall, when I built this guitar out of this rosewood, I believe it's a Cocobolo type rosewood. Well, anyway, when I built it, I had to saw it out of a slab that was up on my shelf for years. It'd been up there for 20 years. And it was basically like a large piece of firewood that I cut all the pieces out and made this guitar. Well, I figured it was probably dry enough, but the truth of the matter is, what I should have done was slice that out and then let it set another year before I built this, because the wood would have stabilized then. Even that wood there, as long as it's been in the shop, it didn't dry out entirely. I mean, I'm telling you for black and white certainty, I know that's the issue. It still had too much moisture in it. I should have sliced it thin and then let those thin slices dry in the shop at least several months before I built this. So I'm sure that's where these cracks are coming from, that the wood wasn't perfectly stable. Here's one of the cracks right here that I'm showing you that you can see. It's right there, and then there's another one right up here. I've already CA glued the cracks, and I'm going to work on making them try to disappear as much as possible. There was another one right here. Anyway, that's my point. There's a lot to know about humidity. At least understand that I'm not trying to give you bum steer information. I'm really trying to tell you what I firmly understand and believe, and it's based on nearly 40 years of doing this. I see it from the end of where the problems come from, See, the music stores, they don't see it from that angle. All they know is that everybody says you've got to humidify instruments because they're made out of wood and they'll expand and contract. Well, they'll definitely expand, I can tell you that for sure. They don't contract very much, but they'll expand like crazy. And then I know you're going to say, well, what about those fretboards? Well, steel doesn't change at all. I mean, it's going to stay pretty much like, that's not true. Everybody knows that works in steel that it will change too with temperature and stuff. I know that. You don't have to tell me. But my point is, compared to the wood, the steel doesn't change really at all. So you will see occasionally where the frets are sticking out of the end of the wood, and the wood will have dried, but then you don't know all the circumstances on that. A lot of times it could be that they did keep it in an attic, or they, or maybe the wood wasn't fully cured, just like this probably wasn't fully cured when I built it. And that's not that uncommon, especially on handmade instruments. And, the instrument that I had in here the other day with that fella that came in just for the advice, I don't know for sure that wood was totally dried down like it should have been when he built that. And that could have been part of his problem. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Just trust me, I do at least kind of know what I'm talking about. And wood will expand almost exponentially. It doesn't contract exponentially. That's for sure. It just doesn't. The physics won't allow that. I hope you got something out of this. I know I beat it to death because we've talked about it many, many times. I know a lot of you already believe what I tell you, but there's a lot of folks that don't. And no amount of talking will change their opinion because they've heard it since childhood that they should humidify their instruments. Bottom line is, at least don't use the gel packs. Just because I've got this in the shop, I'm just going to play a tune that I wrote. And I played this not too long ago, but I played it on the mandolin, so I'm going to play it on the guitar this time and sing it. I can't speak the words out loud that I want to say, and that is why that I must write them down this way. I carefully transcribe every line till I have said what's on my mind. I can't speak the words out loud that I want to say, but it reads like this is the only love I've known, and it ends with now she's gone and left me all alone. But in the middle it tells of our good times, how I thought that she'd be mine. I can't speak the words out loud that I want to say. Now the ink in this well, it's all dried up, and it's getting late, there's no coffee in my cup. And though I've transcribed every line, I still can't say what's on my mind. I can't speak the words out loud that I want to say, but it reads like this is the only love I've known, and it ends with now she's gone and left me all alone. But in the middle it tells of our good times, how I thought that she'd be mine. I can't speak the words out loud that I want to say, no, I can't speak these words out loud that I want to say. Paul says he loves this guitar and that everywhere he goes he gets compliments on the tone of it and all that. He said he was out in Estes Park, Colorado, and somebody walked up to him and said, "Is that what I think it is?" And they said, "That's the last Hurrah guitar." And he said, "Yes, it sure is." So anyway, there you go. While it's a pretty decent guitar, nothing's perfect. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow afternoon on the Shop Talk.